AITA for refusing to let my husband's ex-wife move into our house. When I married my husband, I knew he had a past. He had been married before, and while he didn't talk about his ex-wife much, I was aware that their divorce had been messy. He assured me that their relationship was completely over, that they were just two people who had once shared a life but had moved on. I never had a reason to doubt him. Their contact was minimal, occasional emails regarding loose ends from their old life, the rare phone call when something important came up. It was never anything that made me uncomfortable. Until now. One night, after dinner, he sat me down and told me something that made my stomach drop. He wanted his ex-wife to move in with us. At first, I thought he was joking. He had to be joking. I even let out a nervous laugh, waiting for him to tell me he was messing with me. But when I saw the serious look on his face, my whole body tensed. He wasn't joking. He explained that his ex had fallen on hard times. She had lost her job, was struggling to pay her rent, and had no close family or friends willing to help her. She was facing homelessness, and he didn't feel right letting that happen. I stared at him, waiting for the part where he would acknowledge how ridiculous this was. But instead, he just kept going, explaining how he had been talking to her behind my back for weeks, trying to help her find a solution. And now, he had decided that our home was the best solution. I couldn't even speak for a moment. I asked him, calmly, though my heart was racing, why this was our problem. She was his ex-wife. Why wasn't she staying with friends, applying for assistance, finding literally any other option besides moving into our house? His response made my blood boil. She doesn't have anyone else she can rely on. It was like he thought that sentence alone should be enough to convince me. Like I was supposed to just accept that his past was now my responsibility. I told him absolutely not. There was no way I was comfortable with his former wife living under the same roof as us. It wasn't just inappropriate, it was insane. And that's when the fight really started. He acted like I was being cold-hearted, like I was the bad guy for not wanting to help someone in need. He said it wasn't about their past relationship, that he was just being a good person by helping someone who had no other options. But I wasn't convinced. This wasn't just some acquaintance. This was the woman he had once built a life with, the woman he had promised forever to, the woman he had history with. And now she was supposed to live under our roof, eat at our table, share our space like she was part of our family. I told him, flat out, that I wasn't okay with it. That she needed to figure something else out. That was when I saw the disappointment in his eyes. Like I had somehow failed him for not blindly agreeing to let his ex-wife invade our home. And that was the moment I realized, he genuinely thought I would say yes. I thought that would be the end of the conversation. I had said no, a firm, non-negotiable no. I expected him to understand, maybe even feel a little embarrassed that he had asked in the first place. But instead, he doubled down. He told me I was being cold-hearted, that I wasn't showing any empathy for someone who was going through a really tough time. He said he had hoped I would be more understanding because I was normally such a kind and compassionate person. That struck a nerve. It was manipulative, and he knew it. He was trying to make me feel guilty, trying to make me doubt myself. But I wasn't going to let him twist this around and make it seem like I was the problem. I reminded him that this was his ex-wife. Not a distant cousin, not an old friend, not someone who had nowhere else to go, his ex. The woman he had married, built a life with, and eventually divorced. The woman he had once been in love with. How could he possibly think it was appropriate for her to move into our home? But he had an answer for that, too. He told me that their marriage had been over for a long time, that there was nothing between them anymore, that she was just a person in need and he was trying to do the right thing. He insisted that I had nothing to worry about because he would never betray me. That wasn't the point. It wasn't about trusting him, it was about boundaries. About the fact that our home was supposed to be ours, not a refuge for his past relationships. And yet, he kept pushing. He tried every argument he could think of. He told me it would only be temporary, just until she got back on her feet. He said I wouldn't even have to interact with her much if I didn't want to. He even suggested that we could set up clear rules to make sure everyone was comfortable. It was like he had already planned everything out, like he had fully expected me to say yes. And that realization made me furious. I asked him how long he had been thinking about this, how long he had been talking to her behind my back, figuring out where she would sleep, how it would work, how to convince me. He didn't answer right away. Because he knew. He knew that by the time he brought it up to me, he had already made up his mind. This wasn't a discussion. It was him informing me of a decision he had already made. That was the moment I knew this was bigger than just an argument about his ex needing a place to stay. This was about respect. And the fact that he hadn't given me any. At that moment, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about the ex-wife needing a place to stay. This was about the fact that my husband had already made his decision before even talking to me. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear, he had expected me to just go along with it. To be the understanding wife, who wouldn't dare say no. And when I did say no, he saw me as the obstacle, not the person he was supposed to respect. I took a deep breath, trying to control the mix of anger and disappointment boiling inside me. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg him to see my side. I simply told him, this is not happening. If you can't accept that, then we have a much bigger problem than where your ex-wife is going to live. That was when the real meltdown started. He accused me of being selfish and lacking compassion. He told me he thought I was better than this, as if being a good person meant letting his ex move in like we were running a charity. He even tried to tell me that he would do the same for me if the roles were reversed. That made me laugh, because we both knew that was a lie. If my ex-boyfriend came to me looking for a place to stay, my husband would never in a million years be okay with that. But when the situation was flipped, I was suddenly supposed to be the understanding one. I stood my ground. I told him that if he wanted to help her so badly, he could find another way, help her get a hotel, loan her some money, find her a roommate, anything else. But our home. That was off the table. That's when he said something that made my blood run cold. If you really loved me, you'd want to help someone who's important to me. There it was. The final guilt trip. The emotional manipulation. And that was when I made my decision. I told him if he was so concerned about her well-being, he was more than welcome to go live with her instead. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to compromise. My boundaries were set. And if he couldn't respect them, then maybe we needed to rethink our marriage. After that, things got ugly. He stormed out, called me heartless, and went to stay at a friend's house. Over the next few days, he kept sending messages, saying I was ruining our marriage over something so small. But to me, this wasn't small at all. This was about the fact that he had no respect for me or our home. And now, I'm starting to wonder, if he's willing to cross this line, what other lines is he willing to cross?